look at this real quick and we'll go over this briefly. It won't take just a few minutes. Okay, so we talked about relationships, we talked about communication. This is just a little bit further in on conflict. It says conflict's a normal part of daily life. We can't avoid it. There's methods we can learn in order to handle it in a constructive way. So we've already talked about some of these: problem solving, talked about communication, talked about relationships. So this is kind of bringing it all in together. It says healthcare workers need to develop the skills to handle many different situations before they escalate. So what are some things we've already talked about on how to handle conflict?
Walking away.
Walking away if you're really angry, right? What else?
Shutting up.
Do what?
Shutting up.
Oh, keeping your mouth closed if you need to be nice, right?
Dan. Keeping your opinions to yourself.
Opinions, yes. Keep your opinions out of the conflict.
Just walk away. Or go tell somebody, like, what happened.
Okay.
Count to 10.
Do what?
Count to 10.
Count to 10, right?
Rub your ears.
Finding an arm. Does that really help?
I don't know. I don't know, bro.
Did you make that up?
No, it's off the movie.
Oh.
If I'm in an argument, usually if I know it's not going to leave anyway, it's just going to be an impact, I take a big breath, and I just keep agreeing with them. That's all
That's
I
not
do.
necessarily always the right thing. I
No,
think
it takes them all sometimes.
I think a better way to handle something like that is to just walk away and come back to it later when everybody has thought through some things and calm down.
Don't go after the person if they walk away.
That's right. Don't follow after them or close them off from the door or something like that. Don't do that.
Have you seen
Makes
people do
people
that
angry.
before?
Huh?
Like, get in fights? That's weird.
I haven't, but
I know. Cat, like,
I could if I needed to. I'm just kidding. It says conflict is common when there's a lack of good communication. Remember we said that the other day. Typically, the biggest issues, things that cause conflict, is some kind of miscommunication, a misunderstanding, lack of communication. Don't you typically find that if you get in an argument with someone somewhere along the way, it's either maybe they didn't tell you what they expected of you, or maybe they didn't listen to something that you said, or you didn't listen to something that they said, or I don't know. It's typically starts with the communication, or maybe you took something that they said the wrong way, or maybe they sent you, I don't know, whatever. Y'all agree with that?
or they were just really rude.
Or they were
And
rude.
you were
They
having
didn't
a bad
use
day.
good communication skills, right? It says many problems can be avoided by active listening. It says in active listening, you don't judge the other person. Instead, you try to understand their experience, their feelings, their point of view. And that's good for all areas of life. If you can think of people, and that helps me too, especially here at school, because sometimes you run into students who are really difficult and rude, and that's every day. But if you think through, okay, well, I don't really know what their home life is like. I don't really know what they're doing. I don't know how many hours they're working. I don't know what extra things that are going on. When you think about those things, it gives you a little bit of compassion and says, okay, maybe this isn't as big of a deal as I think it is, or whatever. It says make sure the speaker really knows that you're listening. And what are some ways we can let people know we're listening? We talked about those in therapeutic communication.
Nodding your head.
Nodding your head. What else?
Grunting.
Some kind of leading statements, right? That says, go on, okay, I see. Let them know that you're listening. I watched this episode of Duck Dynasty where, you ever watch Duck Dynasty?
I do sometimes.
Where Phil is in the boat with Miss Kay, and she's like talking, and he's like, That's his way of letting her know that he's listening, even though he really wasn't listening. He just was agreeing with whatever she said. Anyway. It says pay attention and use eye contact if possible. That lets people know you're involved in the conversation. Clarify anything you're not sure you understand by restating it. That's really important. It's important that you don't walk away from conversations thinking that somebody said one thing when you're not really sure. That kind of starts that whole, like, remember when I was talking about the other day, that whole negative self-talk thing where it's like you replay conversations and you think of other ways you could have handled it, or what if they meant this, or whatever. Like, in the conversation, if you'll say, so you're saying blah, 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 whatever it is, and they'll be like, oh, no, wait, that's not what I meant, or, yeah, that is what I'm saying, clarify those things.
That's like a war thing, though. When you say that usually means you probably start a war with somebody.
When you're doing what?
When you say, so you're saying this, because you're usually mad.
Well, it doesn't have to, don't say it in that tone. Say, so I understand you're saying blah, blah, blah. So much of this is your tone and how you say it. So much of this handling conflict. Because that changes things. If I say, so you're saying you didn't do this. Versus if I say, so what you're telling me is that you actually didn't do that.
My mom says that all the time, and I still get mad at her.
But do you see
like
how
adding
one
words.
makes you very defensive, but one makes you want to re-say it? Like, yes, that's exactly what I did. Or, are you questioning what I've been doing? I mean, there's a difference, right? There's a big difference in your tone. And some of you guys, and kids in general, and adults in general, we have a lot more, like, just our natural tone is a lot more aggressive than others. Some people's is worse than others.
Definitely
I tend to not be aggressive enough. Sometimes I am. It depends on what kind of mood I'm in. But some people are very, even though they don't mean to be quite so aggressive and defensive, they just come off that way because that's their tone. And the thing is, sometimes I think we make excuses and we say, well, that's just my personality, or that's just the way I am. Everybody should accept it. But that's not always the case. Like, sometimes we really do need to learn how to change some things about our personality. I mean, it's not like a night and day change, but there are negative things that can be fixed. There's negative things in my personality that I'm constantly working on. There's a difference in excuse me. There's a difference in wanting people to accept me because of, I don't know, maybe I'm just, I have a silly personality. But if I'm silly in moments that really should be serious, that's not a personality issue. That's I need to figure out how to better handle situations. Does that make sense? Kind of?
Like people who smile all the time when they're mad.
Smile when they're mad?
Yeah, I know a girl like that. She's pretty weird.
They only smile when they're mad?
No, they smile all the time, but
Oh.
they're laughing when they're mad, and you're just
It's
like,
just a
why?
defense mechanism that they do. I'm talking more like, let's say I'm a person who is very, let's say I'm just a tell it like it is kind of person. So, I'm like I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Like maybe what you have on doesn't match, and you're my good friend, and I'm like, that doesn't match. Whatever. Okay, now my friend is probably going to be fine with that, and that's just the way I am. I'm just a tell it like it is kind of person. But if they're like, dressed up for prom or something, and I'm like, that doesn't match. Okay, that's probably going to hurt their feelings. And just because that's part of my personality doesn't mean that's the appropriate time to say that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You can't just say, that's my personality, so I'm going to tell you look ugly on prom day. Okay,
I'm probably gonna laugh at someone does that.
I'm trying to think of an example, but I know that's a horrible example. But anyways, do you see what I'm saying? Just because something's a part of your personality doesn't make it okay all the time. Sometimes you still need to adjust and learn how to do that. Don't use your personality being different as an excuse to be negative or rude. There we go. Or the other direction, not necessarily negative or rude, but not aggressive enough. And that's typically where I am. I'll be like, oh yeah, you look awesome. I don't know what else to say, I don't know, whatever. Instead of saying, well, maybe, you might put on some different shoes. And so, does that make sense? Anyway, okay, probably not, but. Examples of active listening. What do you mean by blah, blah, blah? So patient says, I'm going to look like a freak, like the lady we talked about. Well, what do you mean by looking like a freak? Like, tell me what you're worried about. Can you explain more about what your friends are going to say? Or can you explain more about why are you concerned about this and this? Whatever. Could you say more about what happened when? Let me see if I understand you. Let me see if I understand what you're saying. And that is a really good one to use with patients because they're going to tell you different scenarios. My granddaughter did this. My daughter took my medicine. My whatever. So let me make sure I'm understanding you correctly. So your daughter came in. She gave you your medicine, and then she took it back with her. Or, restate what they're saying. Make sure that you understand what's going on. So it sounds like you're saying, if I hear you right, you're saying this and this and this. Again, your tone changes a lot of things in there. If I say, let me make sure I'm getting this correctly. You said that, blah, blah, blah. But if I say, what? You're saying whatever. It changes. So make sure you work on it. I know I've already said that, but it's worth repeating. Sounds like what is important to you is. It sounds like you're saying what you need is whatever. If I understand you correctly, it sounds like you place a high value on this particular thing, whatever. I get the feeling that whatever it is. Just that tells them that you're listening, restating it, that you're clarifying what they tell you. And that will help you remember it too. If you restate it to them, that'll help you remember more about the conversation. Okay, I'm notorious for having full-out conversation with someone, 10 minutes later asking them the same thing, because probably what I was thinking of is, what am I about to say? Or what's my next question going to be? Instead of actually listening to what they're saying. I do that all the time.
A lot of these are like fighting words, but they also apparently can make peace. That's kind of funny.
Yes, they can be fighting words if you use them in the wrong tone. So you got to work on your tone. That's the key in here is how do you say it? Do you come off as defensive? Do you come off as aggressive? Do you come off as domineering? Or do you, are you just really asking for more information? Okay, mediation. This is a voluntary process that allows you, the mediator, to help disputants, that sounds like mutants, but anyways, work to resolve their conflict. So everybody knows what mediation is, right? That's just your third party person who's not necessarily for either side, but a good outside person who can look in at the situation and be more objective and not be so emotional about it. Okay, mediator is the neutral third party. The disputants are the ones who are in conflict. And then a conflict, of course, is a dispute, just vocabulary. Hopefully you all already know this. Mediation brings two people together in a safe and structured environment and helps them to stay focused on finding a solution that meets their needs. So when you add in that third person who's going to mediate, one, it helps them to stay on subject, right? Because typically when you're arguing with someone or you have conflict, you bring up stuff from like 10 years ago, and you're like, you never brought me my shirt back, or whatever, I don't know. Anyways. But this keeps things structured, it keeps them on subject, and it keeps it from getting quite so ugly. Hopefully. It says you'll be helping your peers and others in your school, workplace, etc. to constructively resolve whatever problem or conflict they may have. Any of you guys the harmonizer in your friendships that try to help people be okay? It gets really uncomfortable when everybody's mad at each other.
No, don't even laugh.
I'm the same way at home. Somebody yelling at me, well, I have to do it meanly. I'm like, just shut up and go in your other room. But it gets done.
It says this is the role of a peer mediator, so for you guys, if you have to mediate between your friends. Okay, mediation is voluntary, so both disputants must want to resolve the problem. If the people involved don't actually want to fix the problem or resolve the conflict, it's going to keep going. They're not, they're going to bring it back up later. They're not going to get over it.
Sophomore year, I had to be in pre-mediation with this girl. And it didn't do nothing to make things worse, because I just got even more mad, because I already said I didn't want to go to pre-mediation. I just feel like
before peer mediation wasn't, we had let it go, we weren't talking to each other, it was cool, but then it's like, we went into peer
Because
mediation,
you had to
it
deal
caused,
with it.
it caused more problems than what it was, but it wasn't between me and that person, it was between me and somebody that was going back and forth. So I feel like that made it worse.
And it could, if it's not, if it's not done in a constructive way, if it's not, like it says, where both people really actually want to make things better, it may end up worse. Mediators cannot force people to make problems better. Mediators help the students realize that it's their best interest to resolve it. So hopefully that third party says, okay, let's, we're going to be better off in the end if we can just resolve this. They have to want that resolve in the end. Okay, a mediator who feeds on drama and who feeds on conflict, and everybody knows those people, right, who feed on conflict and feed on drama, then that is not going to be a good mediator because they're going to keep instigating. So you need to find somebody on the outside who's mature enough to be able to handle it.
Sounds like some therapists, like wedding therapists.
Do what?
Therapists, counselors.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
It sounds like they always want you to make them fight.
I don't know that they want it. I think they want to bring things to the surface that are buried down deep, but I don't know. Confidentiality. You should not at any time discuss with others what you heard in the mediation process. Okay, so the mediator, the person who's the go-between, should not go out and share all the information. Okay, that's just not what you do. If there are any questions or concerns, they should be discussed with the mediation coordinator, no one else. Okay, resolution. When disputants have successfully resolved or worked out the conflict and have reached a solution or agreement, that's your resolution. Now this is very formal. Obviously, you're probably not going to do this with your friends. Maybe you make a pact, everybody spits on their hand and shakes or something. I don't know. I'm just doing That's like elementary. But anyway. What's that movie where they did that?
There's a lot of movies where they do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies.
There's even some where they cut their fingers and put their fingers together.
I know,
with
without
the
a
blood.
paddle.
That is
They did the
nasty.
blood thing.
Yeah.
Who?
Without a paddle. Oh, you
Oh,
probably
yeah.
You're right.
That's not good. Anyway. Agreement forms, we don't necessarily need those as far as, sometimes, if this is a work dispute, yes, you might get an agreement form. There's probably all kinds of forms for that, so. It says co-mediation. There are more advantages than disadvantages to co-mediation. Anytime you say co, what does that mean?
We work together.
With or together, yes. This system is effective and based on mutual trust, equal participation, and sharing of ideas. It's important for both of the mediators, so you've got more than one mediator there to be involved early in the process. So advantages can offer a broader array of insight, right? Because you've got more people, more perspectives, hopefully better in the end. Mediators can split responsibilities. Different mediators may use different skills, and you'll see this in the workplace. Because there is conflict there. And so you'll have a person who mediates, or maybe you'll be the mediator. And what else? Skip on down to problem solving. That's the 4-step model. Now, we talked about the 4 steps, right? What are they again?
For problem solving?
Identify the problem.
Brainstorm. Figure out solutions. And then choose the best solution.
Well, 3 is more of evaluate all of your brainstorming ideas, and then 4 is pick your solutions. Label them good or bad, but yes. Okay, it says find a good time and place to talk. This means choosing a time when all parties are calm and ready to talk. Okay, if everybody's heated, it's not a good time to talk because it's just going to get uglier. Set the following ground rules. It says no interrupting. How frustrating is that when you're trying to battle out a conflict, not battle, but talk out a conflict, and everybody keeps interrupting.
Oh, you have no idea.
Makes you so mad.
Yesterday we were at work, we have to use these little talkies, and when someone's talking and other people press that button, then everyone doesn't hear anything, and then you just let go, and you hear that one person. And they know you were talking first, they just interrupt. And so nobody gets anything.
Yeah.
We had that issue yesterday 5 times, and it was terrible, and it made me
Makes
so
me-
mad.
It makes me mad because, like, if I let you talk, I listen to what you have to say, and I'm trying to say what I have to say. Why are you going to interrupt me if I didn't interrupt you? Like,
What also makes me mad is when people say you interrupted them when they're done. That happens to me all the time. Like, I'll wait till someone's done, and they don't talk for like 5 seconds, and so I start talking, and they're like, why are you interrupting me? I'm like, I'm not, you weren't talking. You were
Well,
done.
sister always said that.
But you gotta think, it's whatever they think is going on in their head, so maybe they're still processing and feel like they're still about to go. My husband and I, we're arguing, he does more of the interrupting first, but, I mostly, I don't know, I probably interrupt a little bit. But interrupting drives me crazy. No name calling, okay? Keep that to yourself, no put downs. No, you're an idiot. No, you're stupid. Whatever. And then tell the truth. So ground rules for battling out these conflicts. Tell the truth. Hey, don't, sometimes that's hard to do. Some people tend to exaggerate a lot. So, okay, identify the problem. We've already talked about that. So let each person say what happened. Let everybody tell their side of the story. 9 times out of 10, when everybody tells their side of the story, one person thought this happened. The other person misunderstood something that was said, and it can be resolved right there.
But people aren't like that. They're gonna drag it out.
Well, I know, but ideally, that's the way it works. But the problem is we're all selfish, and we all have our own agenda. I mean, at the root of most of our issues is our own, I would say all problems we have is something about our own selfishness or our own, like, the bad kind of pride,
Reminds me of Reba and her eldest daughter and how she's always fighting with her husband because her husband's like unselfish, but she's like the most selfish person on that show.
Yes.
And they're
Mom used
just
to watch
a
that
little,
show.
they're just a little off.
Yeah, they're just like a little off.
But typically, I think that's why they escalate so much, because parties are not willing to say, okay, maybe I was wrong, or maybe I should have done something different, and so it keeps going from there. But if we can just be the first to if we're having an argument and you're like, you did this, and I say, yeah, I did. What are you going to come back at me with? Like,
It's probably not gonna know what to say.
I
I'm
know,
probably going to
exactly.
scream, why did you do
I don't know
it?
what to say.
That'd be my question. It's like, why did you do it?
Few choice words.
well, and then you explain, if you're not interrupting, you have time to explain. Anyway, it says focus on the problem, not the personalities. Okay? If you have a problem with someone's personality, that's not really a conflict. You need to either get over your problem with their personality, or if they have a really negative personality problem, maybe
I
they
hate
need
those
to.
people that don't
know
like
that.
you and they don't even know you.
oh,
That
that
makes
makes sense.
And
That
then-
happens all
And
the
then
time.
when they do start talking to you, they're like your best friends, like, and they will talk to you, say a couple of words in class, and then walk out of class. Oh, I so totally hate her. I can't stand her. Then why are you talking to me?
Well, you can only change your own mind about things like that. You can't fix somebody else being like that, but you can adjust your own attitude. And that's, that's all you can do, so. Use active listening and I statements, okay? Now, when I start saying you this and you that, how does that make you feel? Defensive. So, but if I say, okay, I realize I should have done this differently, and then, maybe I said this and it was misunderstood, or maybe I blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying you always are wrong and you always have to admit where you're wrong, but typically if there's a big conflict, both parties are at fault somewhere down the line. And if you can't find the place where you were either wrong or something was miscommunicated somewhere down the line, you're probably the problem. If you can't figure out where you went wrong in it too, the problem really is yours, because you're not actually figuring out what's going on. So, something to think about. Avoid communication blockers. What are some communication blockers you guys have dealt with in conflict?
People denying everything.
Okay?
Like you say something and they'll deny it. Or they just want to say, I'm not talking anymore. This
I'm
is
not
my
talking
hand.
anymore.
I'm not
Or
going
they
to talk to you
ignore you.
anymore.
How come
Ignoring,
people ignore me?
not listening.
I do that. Like somebody will be like talking to me and they're just gonna zone out and they'll be like, so will you do that for me? Yeah, and I was like, wait, what did you
I
say?
hate it when
Yeah.
What am I supposed
Okay, it
to
says
do?
brainstorm for solutions, like we talked about. Make sure each person suggests their problems, and you can either come to a compromise where everybody gets a little bit of what they wanted, or you can come to a consensus, which is where you both move forward regardless of, you do what's best for the two of you versus each individual's, what's best for each individual alone. Listen to each other without judging, and then choose a solution. So consider all the options, pros, cons, what's going to work the best for everybody. It says, I statements are designed to express and take responsibility for your feelings rather than blaming others. There's 4 steps to developing an I statement. Focus is on the action or the circumstance you want changed, not the person. So, trying to think of, I had a friend of mine that, I don't even remember, and I'm usually I'm not real I'm definitely not argumentative. I'm definitely not, I don't know. Anyway, I mean, I have my issues, but that's not typically one of them. But anyway, so I had this friend, I just felt like there was something wrong, something constantly going on between us. It was like very tense, very like, I don't know, that was like a whole history of issues. But anyway, and so finally I just went to her, even though I really didn't think that I'd done anything. I was really frustrated with how she handled a situation with the family member. And I just said, I feel like there's something tense between us. Like I'm not, I said, the thing is maybe I've miscommunicated something, or maybe I have, I think I expected this. I don't know, I can't remember. It's been so long since that happened. But anyways, it just changed her whole demeanor when I came into it with, well, I need to be better at, I can't remember what we're talking about now. Anyways, that's a horrible example because I can't remember. But the thing is, if you'll go into it with, what can I do better? What can I do next time so that this misunderstanding doesn't happen? Maybe I should have, whatever. If you'll go into a discussion with that in mind, instead of saying, you did this, you did that, I promise, it will make things better. And it will make you realize, well, maybe you really did do something. Maybe they got mad and, I don't know, said something ugly about you because of something that you communicated and just didn't communicate it very well. So maybe you need to say, well, maybe, I'm really upset that you texted this person and said this, maybe I didn't make it clear, but I really thought that was going to be kept between us. If I go at it with that, instead of saying, you told this to everybody and you knew that I didn't whatever. But if I go in and I say, maybe I didn't make my expectations very clear, but I really wanted that to just stay between us. I didn't really want that shared. Versus, you did this, you did that. You see how that changes things? That changes where that conversation's going to go. It's going to make them less defensive. It's going to make them say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you wanted it that way. Or maybe they just say, well, I don't care, and they just go on and have a bad attitude. But then you can say, I've done everything I can do, I've taken care of my part, and I can move on. It's a lot easier to move on when you've done everything you can do to resolve something than if you haven't. You know what I'm saying? No?
Mhm.
Y'all don't agree?
Mhm.
That's how it was in that particular conflict I had with that girl. I said, I don't know. I said, I just feel like I've had some ill feelings, maybe in just how this other situation was handled. And I said, I'm sorry, like I've kind of dealt with those and I've held on to that, so I'm really, maybe I should have communicated this better, maybe, I should have done this. And so at the end, even though it didn't really get better with her, because it still isn't actually better with her, and this was years ago, I know that I did everything that I could do. I went to her, I said, this is how I'm willing to change, this is what I'm willing to do, and she didn't respond with that. So in the end, I'm good with that, but I don't have this constant well, I need to make things right, or I need to go back and fix something, because I did what I could do, and that's the end of it. We're not good friends, but that's okay. I did what I could do. Does that make sense? Make non-threatening description, and then let reality be the disciplining agent of asking 2 questions. If you continue that behavior, will it make our relationship better or worse? And what do you want it to get better? And I think you'll find a lot of times there's a lot of drama magnets that actually don't want things to be good. They like conflict. I'm not like that, but there are people who are. And those people need friends, but might not want to be your best friend. But anyways, that's my talk on relationships.